Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo. I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers reporter for Buha's Block. Lost my voice there for a moment. Coming to you live from Las Vegas, where I am out here for tomorrow's game against the Mavericks and also to spend some time with my son. So going to do a little bit of a shorter live today. Going to try to keep it in the 45-minute to 1 hour range. One of my shorter lives just because I do have to get up pretty early to get him ready and take him to school. Also, it's the preseason, so I'm still in preseason form, as you guys could tell by the intro. But shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to everybody. Appreciate you all tuning in a little bit earlier than usual, going live before we even hear from JJ and some of the players, because again, trying to wrap a little bit earlier tonight. But Lakers lost 113-104 to fall to 1-3 in the preseason. But of course, the big story, or the big stories of the game, were Luka Doncic making his season debut and Marcus Smart making his Lakers debut. So some thoughts on how those two guys performed, what we can take away from this game, how the Lakers looked. It is worth noting that they did not have LeBron James, who continues to be out. But in addition, they rested Rui Hachimura, Jared Vanderbilt, Jackson Hayes, and Gabe Vincent. We also got the update on Adu Thero that he is going to be reevaluated in 2 to 3 weeks due to the knee swelling. As I said, going back a week and a half now, the initial Adu report, I was a bit skeptical of the timeline of him returning within the next week. And that has continued to play out here, where it's looking like he's going to miss at least a month from that time, if not potentially longer. But he was out as well. Maxi Kleba continues to be out. So Lakers were without over half of their rotation, at least a couple starters. And then the Suns rested everybody. They just got back from China, so they rested Devin Booker, Dylan Brooks. Jalen Green has missed the entire preseason, but Mark Williams and Nick Richards and Ryan Dunn. So the Suns were playing deep bench, third string, G League type guys. And it was not a pretty second half for the Lakers' sake, especially defensively. But from the parts that we're going to talk about, I think there was a lot of encouraging things to take away. Before we get started, you guys know the drill, though. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. So overarching takeaway, this one is going to be simple for me. It's Luka looks like Luka, and I expected nothing less, and I think you guys did as well. But Luka came in and just dominated. He was the best player on the floor, and even by his standards, that there were times that looked like he was going through preseason speed and still a little bit of rust. Ended up having 5 turnovers compared to just 4 assists. And we could see that there was similar to Austin and DeAndre Ayton. Luka and DeAndre Ayton are still figuring out their pick and roll chemistry. They haven't gotten many reps together. This was their first reps against an opponent, a real opponent. So there's some kinks to be worked out with that. But 25 points, 7 of 15 shooting, 4 of 8 on threes. He took the one-footed, just pull up kind of runner, Steve Nash style that we've seen him take before, but that's how you knew he was feeling it. He was getting into it with the crowd. He was getting into it with the Lakers bench playfully, and it was just vintage Luka. He looked like the Luka that we've come to expect. 7 boards, 4 assists, 5 turnovers. But a key stat for Luka was Lakers were plus 11. Granted, this was against a third string type team. So the Lakers, I think even in the Luka portion, kind of underperformed relative to what they should have, just based on having Luka, having Austin, having Ayton, Laravia, Smart. I think they should have won those minutes by a little bit more, but it's the preseason. We're not going to nitpick that. Overall, they looked much better with Luka on the floor. They won those minutes with Luka on the floor. And I thought just getting our first taste of what this team can look like with Luka. They did not miss a beat. They looked a lot like the team that we saw to close last season, at least in the regular season. and the ball was snapping side to side. There was a lot of three-man actions with Luka, Austin, and DeAndre Ayton. Sometimes they'd have Jake LaRavia in there with Austin as a weak side or corner shooter. But I thought, especially for a group that I don't think is going to be the starting group, I think at this point it's likely going to be Rui and Vando in place of Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart. But this is a lineup we could see at some point, maybe in a first quarter or in a second unit shift or something, of Ayton, Luka, Austin, LaRavia, and Smart. And we got to see some reps with a couple of finishers in Smart and Ayton, and then some playmakers in Luka, Austin, LaRavia, and just what that all looks like. And I mean, Smart didn't even take a shot, which we'll get to him a little bit later. But I just thought overall there was a lot to be encouraged by with, like, Luka. We of course, people had been crashing out last week because Luka had not made his debut yet, and the Lakers were being cautious with him and giving him a bit of a rest because of Eurobasket. But he came out, he looked like Luka, he looked like a top 4 player. I thought defensively, like, there were some times where he was going through the motions a little bit, but he did have some nice rotations, some nice help sequences. So I think, like, this is a continuation of what we saw to end last season, a continuation into Eurobasket. It is, I think, ultimately like a different level of competition, which I think was on display more so defensively than offensively. But Luka looked like Luka, and I think that's all you could really ask for coming out of this game. Notable performers, already mentioned Luka, 25, 7, and 4. Austin continues to cook and just kill anybody who is put in front of him. 25 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 4 turnovers. So the turnovers continue to be a little bit of an issue for him, and he still has not really found his playmaking groove, though I would also argue that players are not necessarily making, like, he's still figuring out with Ayton, and there's been several possessions where guys, he's spraying the ball out to shooters, they're not making shots. So with Austin, I think the playmaking will come, but he has been unstoppable on ball, and 8 for 16 shooting, but that I think was like 8 for 13 before he missed a couple of looks late before he got pulled by JJ in the deep in the third quarter. So his night, like, and again, he should be killing this type of competition, but he has gone for 20 plus in all 3 games so far, done so in relatively low minutes. Tonight played a little bit more at 31, but he is looking like he's already in midseason form. And I think we got a bit of a blueprint, which I'm going to be touching on in my takeaways, with like how the Lakers offense can function with Luka and Austin together, and sort of I don't want to say dueling banjos has a negative connotation. I think it's complementary banjos of each guy having their shifts. And it's probably more of like a 2 to 3, if almost comparing it to like running backs in football. It's going to be like Luka getting 2 out of every 3 possessions, Austin getting 1 out of every 3. But I think that alignment works and it makes sense given both of their skill sets and just where they're at in the pecking order. But Austin at 25, again, Ayton had 10 points, 13 rebounds. Continues to have some issues, I think, in the Lakers ball handlers are just still figuring him out. He's a different type of player than Jackson Hayes in the pick and roll, as I've talked about before. I think the hands at times have been a little bit of an issue of bobbling passes or like getting a couple fingers on it or a hand briefly on it. He's had several plays where he either catches a lob or catches a deep pass, misses the initial one, then goes back up with the offensive rebound, gets the putback. So 10 points, 13 rebounds, 5 of them were offensive rebounds, and at least it made 4 shots, 4 for 9. I would say at least 2, if not 3 of those were putbacks directly off of point blank misses. So continues to be a little bit of a work in progress with him, but I think the most encouraging thing with him, again, continues to be the defensive end. 2 steals, 3 blocks. Malawach, I thought, did have his way at times as the roll man in the pick and roll, and there was some breakdowns that was Ayton's fault, some breakdowns that was the low man help defender's fault. So I think overall his pick and roll defense is a bit of a mixed bag, but he is, when he is in the direct action, he is getting his hands with deflections and intercepting passes and poking dribbles loose. And he's also blocking shots and being a rim deterrent. So overall, but between the rebounding and the defense through the first 4 games here, you got to give DeAndre Ayton at least, I think, a B plus. And B plus, A minus through the first 4 preseason games. And the offensive end, I think that one's a little bit more I don't know, C plus ish, maybe B minus C plus range for him overall offensively. We did see the most progress against Golden State last game, but he's looked pretty, like, he especially based on his contract and what the Lakers are asking of him, and him taking a reduced role overall offensively. I think he's been more than fine, just, in totality. Jake LaRavia, 8 points, 8 rebounds. He played deep into the fourth, 3 assists. The shot continues to be up and down a bit, 2 for 7, 1 for 3 on threes. But I thought he was really battling on the defensive glass, and that was a big thing where the Lakers were giving up. They gave up 13 offensive rebounds, and I thought LaRavia was one of the few perimeter guys who was actually getting back, putting a body on guys, and competing. And we've seen that from him so far through the first few games. And I think the shot will come, but he continues to be this connecting piece. Again, 3 assists, had more assists than Austin. Like, I think he's a nice swing pass guy and just greasing the wheels offensively. Marcus Smart did not take a shot. I'll touch on him a little bit later, but 1 assist, 0 shots. For me, in watching the Smart film, I saw a guy who sometimes would take these pull-up threes in transition, and I think that will come. I think he's still getting acclimated to the Lakers offense, but I thought overall, at least on the offensive end, he fit right in and was on his best behavior in terms of shot selection. Ultimately, if anything, I'd like to see him actually take a couple shots and just find his role within the hierarchy. And then otherwise, like Christian Coloco, I liked his minutes. They played him a little bit more because Jackson was out. 6 points, 8 rebounds, a steal, and a block, though the Lakers were minus 12 in his 22, which was the worst mark against or among the bench guys. Nate Williams had a couple flashes in the fourth quarter. Nick Smith hit a couple threes, and I thought continues to look continues to look more comfortable offensively. Still think the defense is a bit of an issue. Bronny had a better shooting performance, but actually, Bronny was minus 24. That was the worst mark of the bench guys. So I will take that back on the Coloco part. The Bronny minutes have been rough so far overall during the preseason, and he was out there during parts of those runs in the second half. And then DK 5 points in 19 minutes, moved back to the bench role with Smart playing his first game. Then takeaway number 1 for me, I think, so to continue off of a point I made during the Warriors game, in terms of the blueprint of like the Lakers being a good to great to even elite offensive team and just having to be passable defensively, I'm going to now focus more on the offensive end of that blueprint. And looking at Luka and Austin, it's really going to be difficult to match up with those two guys. Luka is a matchup nightmare just in and of himself, and picking on Maluach, picking on whoever, he can get to that step back. He can draw 2 on drives and draw a foul, which he got to the free throw line several times, took 7 for 9 at the free throw line. Or he had the one really nice lob to Ayton where, again, a couple of those lobs were intercepted or deflected, but did have the one where he drew 2 and was in that cat and mouse game with the 2 pick and roll defenders, gets downhill, and then throws that ball to Ayton. So I think Ayton and Luka, there are some the intricacies of their pick and roll game, I think, will come. Ayton is a guy who likes the ball in the pocket. Luka isn't. He can make pocket passes because he's one of the most gifted passers of all time, but that's not his preference. His preference is that cat and mouse game, and then finding the opening to hit the guy with the lob, or to make that skip pass to the corner, and then we saw, or to the weak side wing, and then get the defense in rotation. So we saw a lot of that with him. He had several brilliant one-handed looks that we know he makes all the time. So I think like Luka is going to do Luka things. I think Austin, when he can assume more usage, can at least right now call his own number at a really high level. And I think the playmaking is still a work in progress, but we have seen it from him before. He averaged 6 assists per game last season and 8 without LeBron. So I think those numbers will come. Lakers also didn't have their full complement of, I think this game looks much different if you have Rui out there, you have Gabe out there, even Jackson out there with some of the second unit groups as a lob threat and pick and roll guy, and also a guy who has had reps and experience with Luka and Austin in both the regular season and the playoffs. So overall, I think this is what we're going to see in terms of, I think Rui will of course factor in. I think Gabe will factor in a little bit more, especially in the short term with LeBron out. But it's going to be heavy doses of Luka and Austin running pick and rolls and stack actions and horns actions. And there's some actions with Luka off the ball, getting him in the post or getting him off of screens. I think the Lakers need to do a better job of running that more frequently. But like the offensive end, to me, it was a continuation of what we saw last season at times, what we saw last season during the no LeBron stretch. And I think this is going to be a really high level offense. The defensive end, I still have a lot of questions about. And there were times they got shredded tonight, just eviscerated by like G League third string level competition against like starters or like key bench guys. And that to me was a bit concerning. But the offensive end, I have very few concerns with. And I think, again, there will be some rhythm things, some timing things, some just chemistry continuity that develops as they get more reps to start the season. It might be a little bit rusty or a little bit out of rhythm to start, but give it a few games, 5-6 games. Like I think they're going to be humming at a very high level until LeBron comes back, and then fitting LeBron into that will have some adjustment period. But I think the offensive end, like I left this game really bullish of what this team's offense is going to look like with their primary rotation. Takeaway number 2 is Marcus Smart, first impression. So offensively, I thought was on his best behavior, didn't force anything, didn't have a turnover, had 1 assist, didn't take a shot. So I would like to see him be a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more assertive in that regard. But this maybe is the argument, or part of the argument for him coming off the bench, is if he is playing a lot next to Luka and Austin, he's going to primarily be a shooter. Whereas if he's coming off the bench, I think there will be some situations in which he's a secondary ball handler or maybe even primary ball handler, setting up situations where Luka or an Austin is playing off the ball, or at least not having to bring the ball up. So I think that's like maybe something to consider when we're talking about Marcus and his place in the rotation, and why I think it's been trending toward him coming off of the bench. But defensively, I thought there's a lot of things he did well. I think his on-ball defense, more so on the wing, like he really locked up Nigel Hayes-Davis. And I think Hayes-Davis started like 0 for 5, 0 for 6, and Marcus was the primary defender on him. I didn't like his defense as much on Jared Butler, and Jared Butler balled out tonight, 35 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. He had, I believe, 22 in the first half. Completely dominated the Lakers in the first half, and didn't matter who was guarding him. He was beating them in the pick and roll. He was getting by them. He was getting into the teeth of the defense. He looked like an all-star player in that first half. And so this to me is a little maybe confirmation bias of what I saw on film last season with Marcus, but I didn't like him as much as the point of attack guy against a primary ball handler who's getting a bunch of screens and having to navigate that and also stay in front of that guy who's maybe a little bit quicker than him at this point of his career. But as him as a wing defender and either funneling the guys into Ayton, funneling the guys into the help, or just guarding the guys straight up and maybe in the post or something, I thought he looked much more comfortable and much more effective. So I do think he projects more as a wing defender than a point of attack guy. That's been the way that he's been used the last couple of years in Memphis and Washington. For the Lakers' sake, that is notable because they need both wing defense and point of attack defense, and that's maybe where Jared Vanderbilt and Gabe Vincent get deployed as those point of attack guys more, and Marcus is more of a wing guy. But we played 20 minutes against, again, a third string team that I don't want to take away. Like, I don't want to extrapolate too much about Marcus from this. This is just first impressions of what he looked like, the way the Lakers used him. I think there's still far more he can do offensively for them. And then defensively, at least the early returns were more of a wing guy than a point of attack / guard guy. But again, we need more of a sample size to really assess this. And then takeaway number 3 is going to be the Lakers cleaned up the fast break points. So that's been something JJ's been harping on continually every game. I've been harping on continually every game. This was the first game that they won the fast break points battle, 14-10. So they cleaned that up. They did struggle with turnovers, which led to a bunch of points off of turnovers. And those sometimes are kind of fast break points that aren't technically counted as fast break points. So they had 20 turnovers that led to 26 points for the Suns compared to Phoenix's 13 turnovers that led to 14 for LA. But I thought that was an improvement where LA, there was more of an urgency. There was a concerted effort to get back to prevent some of those opportunities. And again, the half court defense was pretty bad. So I don't want to act like they had a good defensive performance tonight. Overall, Phoenix had a 115 offensive rating. So, and that was also, a little influenced by fourth quarter, garbage time, whatever. But Lakers defense could certainly be better, and especially against this level of competition. But I thought there were some subtle improvements and also there's, as I've talked about, sometimes a good to great offense that can improve your defense. And I thought, especially with Luka out there, when they're scoring more and Luka's getting to the free throw line, Luka's hitting threes, Luka's setting other guys up, that allows you that time to get back in transition. Whereas when you are, they did turn the ball over a lot, but when you are turning the ball over, you're not getting as high percentage looks, or you're just not scoring as much. It can turn into a track meet, and the Lakers are often going to just lose track meets because they don't quite have the personnel for it. Realize I didn't do stat of the night. So I'll say 50 points combined with Luka and Austin on just 31 shots. That to me is, I think, a sign of things to come. Those guys also only played 53 combined minutes. So they're scoring like a point per minute each or combined. Like that's an efficient level. I'll also give Marcus Smart a nod for not taking a shot and being on his best behavior offensively. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. My hair's all over the place right now. BC says, I'll believe the offense will be good when I see it. I mean, I think the offense was good. Like first quarter, they scored 29. Second quarter, they scored 37. Third quarter, the Lakers are apparently contractually obligated to just be a mess in the third quarter. Once again, fourth straight game, they get just blitzed in the third quarter. And part of that was they started to, they pulled Luka, a little bit past the midway point. They pulled Ayton eventually. Austin played until like 2 minutes left. They pulled Smart. So they started to bring the bench guys in, and with who is available, once we start getting into the Dalton, Bronny, Nick Smith, Christian Koloko range, like that, it's going to be problematic. Although I guess my one pushback to that is like they are playing against guys who are in theory their similar level of like, third string in the Suns depth chart, G League guys, two-way guys in Exhibit 10 contracts, all that stuff. And the fact that, the Lakers were so thoroughly outplayed, like I would like to see a little bit better play overall from those end of bench guys. They've each had like moments or flashes. I would say more so particularly Dalton, Nick Smith, and Christian Koloko, but they have been largely outplayed through these first four games by their counterparts in like similar positions on the roster. And that continues to be a bit of a concern for me of just looking at like 11 to 14, or even if we want to extend it to the two-way guys, 11 to 16 on the Lakers has largely been outplayed by the opponents 11 to 16, whether it's Golden State or Phoenix. They've only played two games or two opponents, up to this point. So I think the offense was pretty good, especially in the first half. It did die a quick death in the third. And again, the third was just a mess. But yeah, Danica says, nice hair. Yeah, I did. It's a long story, but this is when you're on daddy duty, the hair comes second or third. Danica says, nice hair, Jovan. What are the chances Luka AR play tomorrow? So I'm glad you're following up on this, because I was surprised by the Lakers' decision to play tonight, especially with sometimes I'll just think of these things in simple business terms. And like the NBA is considering and has considered expanding to Vegas, and Vegas with the in-season tournament, now the NBA Cup and Summer League is like, it is a hot spot for the NBA. And if they do expand, at least in America, Vegas is going to be, I think Vegas and Seattle are clearly the top two cities in America that would potentially get a team. So I thought that just for like Vegas's sake, they would want these guys to play tomorrow, but it is looking like they're going to rest. I don't, if they were this cautious with them last week, I don't see them being like, yeah, just play in a preseason back-to-back. That to me, like back-to-backs are statistically with the performance staffs, that's like a red flag or at least a yellow flag in terms of injury risk and re-injury or aggravating something. So I would be pretty surprised if they play tomorrow. I haven't seen anything yet in terms of a report, or maybe JJ said something post game. Would love to know if you guys have anything to share in the chat. But my assumption would be they're out tomorrow, and I think the guys who rested, like I think JJ just didn't want to have a situation where he played all the guys and then tomorrow they basically had to play like 7 guys. I don't fully agree with that. I would have rather, or at least play those guys a half and then some of them play tomorrow. A few of them, maybe Laravia, Dalton, a few of the younger guys could have played tomorrow and then they're playing like maybe a quarter and a half. And then you're going with the rest of the 2-way and younger guys for like, I don't know, 2.5 quarters. Like it's not ideal. And the Lakers just have so many injuries right now that I think it's been difficult for them to manage. And if they were at full strength, they probably would have played their guys tonight and then rested most of them tomorrow. But I would have liked to have seen that at least. But I think it's pretty low chances that at least Luka plays, maybe Austin, because they've been a little bit less cautious with him. And he's still been practicing at full strength no matter what. I think he's a guy that can maybe play tomorrow. But as of right now, I was a little surprised they chose this night compared to tomorrow night. But look, I feel like I think the other guys are going to play tomorrow, and then likely Luka and Austin. And Ayton hasn't gotten a break yet, so maybe Ayton gets a break. Glenn asks, not really a question about the game, but a play-by-play on some big games with you would be cool, like how Trev does with Lakers Nation. Yes, I am planning on doing playback. So, right now I'm going to be at every home game, and there's probably going to be about 8 to 10 tentatively right now, like road games I'm going to, and I'm still finalizing those and picking those out of the schedule. But the other 30 to 33 games or so, I am planning to do playback for at least some portion of them, if not half or even most. I'm still trying to figure that out. I've done playback as a guest. I've never done playback as a host and just watching a full game, but I'm very interested in that. So I'm definitely planning on it. Not around. What's up? Says yo. Sean Parker, how'd you feel about Smart tonight? Offensively, overall, I don't want to make any grand proclamations with Smart. I think we still need to see more of him to fully assess like where he's at physically, where he's at within the rotation, what he's bringing to both sides of the ball. I thought offensively, I've been joking that he was on his best behavior. Like he was not taking any of those pull-up threes or calling, like sometimes he'll call his own number and have these wild drives. And he is a skilled and proven scorer to an extent in terms of he's been a double-digit guy for most of his career. So he does have a track record, and most of those teams were good. Most of the time he's playing next to a Jason Tatum, a Jaylen Brown, and, very high-level teams, Al Horford, all that stuff. So he's been a important offensive piece on really good teams. That's not going to be his role here. I think his role is far more going to be secondary ball handler and playmaker, spot up shooter. Occasionally he might be able to call his own number and take a pull up or have a wild drive where he throws up a floater. But I think that's going to be a rare occurrence compared to previous stops. Just because I think at best he's 6th in the pecking order. And with the way Gabe's been playing in the first few games of the preseason, like I think you might even have to slot Gabe slightly ahead of Marcus right now, at least in terms of like an offensive threat. So I think Marcus is going to be pretty low in the offensive pecking order, and I thought he bought into that very well tonight. I would like to see a little bit more aggression and also a little bit more of the playmaking, but that's probably going to come in the form of staggering him, Luka, and Austin. And then in terms of the defense, I thought the defense was solid. I thought there were some really good possessions. I thought there was some we already saw some communication there, and I think that's an area he's really going to help. Was there was some switching stuff where he was, I remember one possession with Dalton, but there's also other possessions where he's telling guys where to go and like switch this, and I'm going to pick up your guy or whatever. So I think that's important. This is a group that by nature is pretty introverted. They are a pretty quiet group. So DFS really was important in this regard, and I think Marcus Smart is going to be important in this regard as well. So that was an encouraging thing. I thought he looked more comfortable and just more effective overall against bigger players compared to Jared Butler or just the point of attack duties. And he did both. I think he was more on the wing and kind of more off the ball, but I thought he looked better when trying to contain in smaller spaces or using his physicality rather than more open space at the top of the floor, navigating screens and playing drop coverage. So I think that's something to monitor. It might be a situation where Jared Vanderbilt and Gabe Vincent are more the point of attack guys, but we have some time to figure that out. Ken Carter, Jovan looks like he just worked out. I did work out earlier today, but I did not work out just now. And then Ken Carter says, I look like I just woke up after being hungover. That is what daddy duty does to you, is you you feel hungover all the time. But no, I'm feeling great. I'm doing great. Chris says, haven't they said Luka's definitely not playing tomorrow? I thought I heard that earlier. Maybe I was not, I'm in Vegas right now. I'm not in Phoenix. So but I would assume that. Brian Farmer, how should the Lakers attack the third quarter of games? Not the way they've been doing it. I would say that. I think that's a start. Having a certain level of urgency. It is like, I think there's a mental component to it where they just let their foot off the gas, and it's like it takes them a little bit to get back into the game, both mentally and physically. And I don't know what it is, because this has kind of been a thing for years. I think there's been maybe a couple years over the last few where it's been like a little bit better, but last year's team certainly struggled with this as well. I don't know what's getting lost in translation at halftime, or again, maybe because it's the preseason, guys are letting their guard down a little bit, but it does. Like, I will say, just a couple of observations here. Like, Kamen Malawach, stud, looked really good. I really liked the way he played and him on both sides. Jordan Goodwin, I think, would be the Lakers' 10th best player. That's a guy that I think I said at the time they were going to miss, and he just killed them tonight. But overall, I give Jordan Ott a lot of credit for how hard this team has played. And I would say, if we're judging, like, the Lakers have played 4 games, if we're judging the Lakers as like, 4 different teams, right? Because they've had different guys in and out. And then the 2 opponents in Golden State and Phoenix, and sort of like the 4 games overall, out of the 8 possible rankings in terms of like who's played the hardest, I think Phoenix in both games has been the hardest playing team that the Lakers have faced, and that, harder than the Lakers have played. So, like, I give Jordan Ott, as a brand new head coach, rookie head coach, a lot of credit for getting his guys to really buy in. And again, this was a night that the Lakers probably should have won those starter minutes by like 15-20, and it was a little bit closer than that. And then the bench players come in and they get outplayed by Phoenix's bench. So you got to give him credit for like the way that team is playing at a very, very high level. And it's different situations, right? A lot of those guys are fighting for minutes or fighting for literally their livelihood in the NBA. Although the Lakers have several of those guys as well. So yeah, I mean, I just give Phoenix credit. Christopher Battle, Vegas meetup. If you're going to the game, I could do a meetup around game time. Otherwise, I'm going to be with my son. He's out here. So I guess I would have a window tomorrow a bit before the game. And then Thursday, I'm going to be with my son outside of school. So I guess maybe a midday, but I'm probably recording. Ken Carter, Jovan, I know you're not a fan of chaotic rah-rah players, but what do you think is a healthy chaotic player in your eyes? I mean, I That's fair, and you are in tune with my basketball sensibilities, so I appreciate that. I think like there are like Vando to me is a guy who brings a certain level of chaos, honestly, on both ends. And when Vando is right, I think that's a really good level or healthy level of chaotic that like you're implying. I think Dylan Brooks, when he's playing within his skill set and the team flow offensively, is another example. Marcus could be an example of that as well, depending on which version of Marcus you're getting. But there are some, like, I think the guys who are more defensive minded, I have more leeway with the chaos, because sure, maybe they're going to jump a passing lane and get out of position, or they're going to blow through a screen at the point of attack and pick up a foul. But I think like those types of plays are like, that mentality can be a net positive overall. It's more the offensive guys that are chaotic to me, that are taking bad shots, turning the ball over. And that's a lot of like the inefficient lottery team guys. Like there are a few that come to mind that I'm not going to name, but like, I think you guys know those types of players. So those are the guys that I think it's harder to fit them into a winning system. Whereas the defensive guys, I think, again, some of them are wild on both sides, where a Brooks, a Smart, not as much Vando, will just take wild shots. And I think sometimes like call their own number to their team's detriment offensively, but they're overall net positive players that you live with the good outweighs the bad. So I would say in general, I agree with you, but I think I'm coming around to the chaos. I'm evolving my mindset. I see Dylan Brooks, Jose Alvarado, Colby. If you end up going to the game in Cleveland in January, I'd love to meet up if you're going to be there. Good to know. And it is, we got to see what's going on with LeBron. And if that's his final Cleveland game, that would be a pretty important game to attend. And of course, Cleveland's one of the best teams in the league as well. So that should just be a high level game regardless. So it is on my list. Like, I have a list of games I'm definitely going to, and then another list of potential depending on price, and I'm constantly monitoring that stuff, and price and context of the game, like where the Lakers are at, if there's a clear storyline to it. So I'm doing some more intentional traveling this season, but definitely on my list of potential games. And if we get any more clarity with LeBron and his situation, that could be a swing factor. Sarah said, everyone's so mean to me. Am I getting roasted right now for the hair? That's fine. Homie33, Jovan, can the Lakers media members beat the Lakers coaching staff in a pickup game, not get embarrassed like the Celtics? If you want my honest opinion, I think we would lose, but I don't think it would be as embarrassing as the Celtics. I think you got former college player. I mean, I guess it depends like how wide we're casting the net here of what qualifies as like Lakers media versus NBA media or whatnot. Cause like Jordan Richard, Swish Cultures, he's a former college player. He's 6'10". I mean, it's crazy seeing him interview guys like even like a Rui or a Vando, because he's taller than them and he's kind of looking down at them. And of course, like, I think he had a knee injury and he never played in the NBA, but that alone kind of gives us, I think, a little bit of a head start. I was a little offended at Dave McMenamin for putting me on the bench. I vehemently disagree with his lineup decision, and I did shot him a nice text about that with the MJ meme. But I think we would score more than 4 points, and I think it also depends who plays. Like, is JJ playing, or is he coaching the coaches? But they do have, like, it's also like, is this just the assistants? Because I think it's a little bit different if it's some older guys like a Bob Byer and a Nate McMillan and a Scott Brooks versus like some of the player development guys who are former like college players and much younger, more athletic. So I think it depends on how, like, what does the coaching pool look like? What does the media pool look like? But I think it would be closer even in the worst case scenario, I think it'd be close to 59-4 or 57-4, whatever that final score ended up being. So I think we would put up much more of a fight, but I do think ultimately we would lose. No username 12 says, hi, Jovan, what's up? Puppy Chow 302, what is going on with Connect? Is he being too passive, losing faith he belongs in the league, but he has a flamethrower, but he was a flamethrower for a short while last season? I think Connect is a guy who I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of him with the Luka and Austin lineup, like maybe even starting him tonight just to see him playing off those guys. But I think he will benefit from the full group and being like, I don't really think there's going to be a lineup that Dalton's in that he might not even be like a top 3 option in almost any full strength lineup offensively, which I think could be a good thing for him of just like, he does need the ball, certainly a certain amount to get into a rhythm. I don't see that being realistic on a team with Luka, Austin, Rui, Ayton, Gabe, even Marcus as like a ball handler, playmaker. I just think he's going to be 6th or 7th. Maybe he's battling Marcus for 6th, but Marcus and Gabe. But like there's just a limit to like how much he's going to be able to do offensively in terms of role. But we do know he has a flamethrower. I don't know that I fully agree with JJ's assertion that he's a top 1% shooter in the league, because he's had like 2 or 3 stretches like that, but it's been very up and down in a way that I think if he was like, he's of course the top 1% shooter like in the world or among professional basketball players maybe, but like in the NBA, I think that's a different tier of shooter that, maybe he's top 3%, top 5%, but the top 1%, I think, don't have as many peaks and valleys as he does, or if they do, it's far lower and shorter dips in their consistency. So I think he's still finding his way. It's tough because he is older, right? And people will look at the age and 24, like he, in theory, is supposed to be more NBA ready than I think he's been up to this point. But I also want to give him a little bit of grace of the whole trade situation and then falling out of favor in the rotation. And like at some point, like you got to stop giving the grace, and it does just matter about the results and are you delivering or not. So I've probably been more critical of Dalton than a lot of people covering the team because I think the defense is a real problem and a real limiting factor. But I think offensively, he's still finding his way. We do see the flashes. We do see the flickers. But I think he and Gabe are a little similar in a sense of like, I think both guys are most effective when they have the ball in their hands and can just run some pick and roll and just touch the ball a little bit more. But this is not the team that's going to happen on. So it's either, I think it's like adapt or die. And I think Gabe has done so far a pretty good job early on, though he's also gotten more opportunity than I think he will later, or like once the regular season starts. But with Dalton, it's kind of like adapt or die. Like you need to be able to go 3 minutes without touching the ball and then hit a corner 3. Like that's just what you need to be able to do. And if you can't do that, then your future is probably not on this team. And that's what this team needs. So I think I don't think he's been too passive. Like I think he's probably over, like there was a time he was maybe forcing it a little bit too much, especially in summer league. And I think he's over or properly adjusted that. But yeah, I mean, I think right now he looks like the 10th man. That's probably an appropriate role for him. And we'll see how things go. What up, Fang Charlie? Catalyst, I've talked about this a little bit, but it seems like Luka is probably going to skip tomorrow. I have not seen official confirmation of that. Let me make sure nothing has been... there's nothing explicitly so far that at least that I'm seeing about him missing tomorrow, but I assume he will. Jake from State Farm, what do you think of Goody? I think Goody's awesome. I mean, I criticize the decision to let him walk. I wouldn't bet on it, but I do think there's an alternate reality in which he's like a better player overall than Marcus Smart this year. I would bet on Smart, but like I think there's at least like a 20-30% chance that he's a better player. I mean, he's awesome. I just think he's a winning player who does a lot of the little things. I think tonight, like he got hot, and I don't expect. He took 20 shots. Like that's not going to be his role for this team, or if he had stayed with the Lakers. But 24 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 turnovers, 5 fouls, but plus 14. Like he's just. I just really like Jordan Goodwin's game. Sean Parker, Jovan, how do you feel about Cooper Flagg so far? I'm a big fan of Cooper Flagg. I think he's special. And I will say, for those of you who have been critical of me and I wouldn't say I've been like anti-Dallas, but I've been a little skeptical of Dallas particularly because of the Kyrie injury. And I thought D'Lo regressed a bit last year, both as a shooter / scorer, but also as a playmaker. And I expected that to uptick in Brooklyn. It didn't really in a meaningful way, in my opinion, at least. But Cooper Flagg to me is so good and so ahead of schedule that, and now they're going to be running him at point guard, that like just some, I know AD's been, Dallas fans haven't been happy with AD, but AD is going to be AD. We know sometimes he can get off to slow starts, but Cooper Flagg to me is like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the all-star conversation this year. Like, I don't think it's rare for a rookie to make the all-star team, right? But I think he's going to put up all-star level numbers, and I think he'll probably be one of the honorable mentions this season. So, yeah, I think he's. So I'm. Point being, I'm shifting on Dallas, where I was like relatively low on them, but I still had them as probably the 8th best team in the West, with the upside once Kyrie gets back to maybe be like 6th. I think that's probably low, and this team, even without Kyrie, could. Home court's pretty aggressive, but like they could be the 5th or 6th seed, and that's a little bit higher than I had them. Ken Carter, what do you think Luka being an international superstar / Spanish speaker does for the Lakers brand in ways other Laker greats couldn't do? How does it help the league aura-wise on a global scale? It's huge. And I mean, the immediate name I think of is Kobe Bryant, and you also had Pau Gasol. So that stretch of Lakers basketball, 2 championships, finals, 3 straight years. And I mean, Kobe was already a global superstar at that point, but I also think playing with Pau, like, even just added more to that, and especially with Spanish speaking fans, which we know both in LA and Southern California and in California overall, but also America and just the globe. Like, Spanish is I don't need to tell you guys how big Spanish is globally. So it's like, I think that the Lakers already have, I would assume the like highest Spanish speaking fan base in the NBA. And you then throw in a guy like Luka, who played for Real Madrid and was this prodigy over there. And then he also speaks Spanish fluently, and he's answering questions and press conferences in Spanish. It's like, that's just a match made in heaven. So I think the Lakers have always welcomed and embraced international stars. And LeBron is not a Spanish speaker or like that, but he's also a global. I mean, we saw the reaction he got in China. So like, they've always had the biggest stars throughout NBA history. And then I think more recently, guys like Kobe and Pau and now Luka. And of course, Pau is a native Spanish speaker, but like Kobe and Luka, I think that added element to their stardom, I think just gives them even more of a boost with a lot of the international, but I would even say local fan base. So yeah, I think it's a big thing, and it adds to Luka's aura, and it's a differentiator even with guys like a Shea or a Jokic, who are both international guys but don't quite tap into that fan base in the same manner. Gio says Laravia looks slow. To be honest, I think that's just how Laravia is. I think maybe there was one time earlier in the preseason, JJ mentioned shape and transition defense when speaking to Laravia specifically, which at this point, I think I've started to understand JJ's tendencies enough to know when, like, sometimes he will answer a question about a player and then go into a different topic that is like his way of kind of subtly hinting at something related to that player, but like not directly. So with that one, it was sort of like he went into the transition defense and guys being in better shape, and he didn't like directly point at Laravia or call him out or anything, but just looking at the answer, it was like, okay, like he was asked about Laravia, and that somehow sparked him into transition defense and the team not being in good enough shape. So maybe there's an element of that here. I do think Laravia is like not some speedster or like freak athlete. He is a bigger, slower forward who relies more on his strength and intelligence, and he's more of a ground bound guy. So he's not like a high flyer. He's not a speedster in transition. So I think he's got a funky game. Like he's a little funky. He's unorthodox. So I think we've seen elements of that. Now, can he maybe be in better shape and that translate and he look a little bit quicker? Sure. I think that's probably the case, but I also think that's just partly who he is. Danica, how many All-Stars do you expect the Lakers to have this season? I expect the Lakers to have 2. I think with like LeBron is certainly a guy who I expect to be an All-Star despite the games missed, whatever that number ends up being. Like, I guess he's got to get it with the fan vote because he's always among the leaders, and he might lead the West or again, be at least like the front court leader. With the media and the players vote, the media votes, that's for the starters, and then for the bench, it's the coaches. So maybe he doesn't get in, but I think he's just such an institution that he's going to get in despite, and I mean, expect him to play at an all-star level. I think the one thing with LeBron now just might be if he misses 10, 15 games, and let's just say it's 15, if you're comparing that, minus 15 of the first 35, 40 games compared to some of these other guys that maybe have similar numbers but have played 10, 12 more games than him, that could be a differentiator. So I expect him to still make it, and then I expect Luka to make it. I think Luka will be a backcourt starter, and again, he's one of the, it will probably be him and Shea in the back. I mean, it's actually interesting. Him, Shea, and Ant, that's a pretty close competition, but I do think Shea and Luka are the 2 best players in that group. So yeah, I expect Luka to be an all-star. I think Austin, I guess the path for Austin to make it would be LeBron. Just this thing lingers and he misses a bunch of time. And I've referenced it before. Austin's numbers last year without LeBron were 27 points and 8 assists, which are clearly all-star numbers. Like that, I think if he averages that, he will be an all-star. Now, I don't know. I don't think he's going to average that with LeBron back. And I think the pecking order will be rearranged and it'll be clear that it's Luka, LeBron, Austin. But if LeBron misses 15, 20, 25 games, if we're now pushing it like pessimistic and a larger absence, that probably costs him. And if the Lakers are like a home court team, typically the teams in the top 4 or 5 at least have 2 candidates, if not 2 all-stars on the team. So that's like, I guess the path I could see would be Lakers don't really miss a beat without LeBron. They continue winning at a high level, and Austin's putting up all-star numbers. LeBron maybe comes back 10, 15 games before the all-star voting ends. It's just not enough time, and maybe he misses it. But so to answer your question, I think they'll have two. My bet would be Luka and LeBron, but I do see like a narrow path to it being Luka and Austin. I also see technically, I guess, a path to like maybe they don't win as much without LeBron, but he misses a bunch of games, so he doesn't make it. And then because they're not winning as much, maybe all Austin's numbers aren't as good, or even they are good, but they're just not, they're the 6 or 7 seed. So they're like, we're not going to have 2 all-stars off of a 7 seed. In that case, then they have 1. But I think Luka's a lock 100%. LeBron just might miss it because of the injury. And then Austin, I think, has an outside chance, depending on what happens with LeBron and the Lakers' success with LeBron out. Dave Lopez with the best summation of the game. Love the first half. Second half was sad. I agree. Princess 808, Dylan Harper is better than Flag even in efficiency. Yeah, I mean, I like Dylan Harper too. I think Flag's better. But I think Dylan Harper's issue right now is he's just going to be coming off the bench and in a bit of a smaller role in San Antonio. But Dylan Harper, I'm very high on long-term as well. Darren or Duran. So how are we feeling for the first 10 games? Let's pull it up. I still think the Lakers. So it's. I'll be honest. I'm concerned with the first 2 games. I already was projecting the Lakers to split the first 2. That's home Golden State, home Minnesota. I don't know. I think Golden State is kind of a stylistically a tough matchup for the Lakers, especially without LeBron. Like, he always does well against Golden State. He will bully ball them. He will punish their lack of size. Without LeBron, I'm a bit worried about the defense, the 3-point defense, both their ability to navigate screens, navigate off-ball actions, close out at the 3-point line. I'm a bit nervous about the pace and fast break tendencies with Golden State. And we really have not seen. There's been a couple of good Lakers defensive stretches, but I would say that the defense has been at a level where, again, I've said like the third string G League guys have been having their way against them at times, where it's like I'm a little bit concerned with. I know everyone's focused on the offense and the rhythm with Luka and Ayton in the pick and roll, Austin and Ayton in the pick and roll. Like, what's that going to look like? I actually think it's more like the defensive end, where I think guys are botching switches and miscommunications and not getting back in transition. And I think, in my opinion, the lack of continuity has actually been more on the defensive end. And already this is a group that I think has a capped defensive ceiling as constructed, and needs to rely on communication and team defense and like some of the stuff we saw last year when they were good defensively during that middle stretch. So point being, I'm a bit concerned for the Golden State game. Minnesota game, like maybe they can get up for that one from an emotional perspective of like the revenge factor. It's the team that you lost to in the first round, but that's also a really good team. And I don't feel great about the Ant matchup. So I'm a little nervous about an 0-2 start, but then at Sacramento, home Portland, at Minnesota, at Memphis, home Miami, at Portland, home San Antonio, at Atlanta. That's the first 10. I think 6-4 is probably the most realistic start to the season, but I thought that could have been 7-3 or 8-2 with LeBron. I think 6-4 is probably like the realistic, optimistic scenario. The most realistic scenario might be 5-5, but I'll say 6-4. Bino, what do you think of LeBron's monitoring the team comment? I'm not really swayed by it in the sense of I thought the statement he released when he opted in was along those lines of basically monitoring the team's offseason movement. I guess the interesting part of this would be, to me, this kind of indicates that like at media day, he was asked about it by Andy Kamenetsky, and I said at the time, I thought like he gave praise to the offseason and the roster, but it wasn't like the most convincing, or it was, I thought it was a little bit of lip service. And then this report coming out kind of validates that, in my opinion, where it's a little bit like, I don't think he was fully happy with the direction of the offseason in terms of like not moving a pick or making a more all-in move. And if they struggle in his absence or get off to a slow start, then, I guess we'll see how that plays out potentially. But I'm not like surprised. And I feel like it's been trending this way. And I think the big domino to push it in this direction was the statement when he opted out, because that was not a normal thing to do. But also, I'm about to wrap in a few minutes here, so I don't want to get too much into the LeBron situation, but that's my like 2-minute thoughts on it. What's up, Mars Hall? Chris, best defense is a good offense. Trust Luka. I mean, that's what I said earlier. So I think the offense could be at a certain level where I think this is the blueprint for LA is a great offense and a passable defense. For now, I think with LeBron, the defense can be a little bit higher, but we'll see. Jano, what's the percentage AR is traded before the Lakers lose him for nothing? I would say relatively low. I still think the Lakers plan on keeping AR and nothing. I haven't heard anything to change that. I think, as I've said before, I think this is going to be a big audition season for him. And if it doesn't work over the first 40 to 50 games, or they get a sense that maybe he's pricing himself out of their ideal range, then maybe that's a different conversation. So I guess if he like does too well or underperforms in either way, maybe that kind of changes that conversation a little bit. But I think it's almost like a bell curve. I think the middle 70 to 75% of outcomes is probably just Austin staying on the team and him re-signing as a Laker. Again, if it trends too much in either direction, maybe that shifts it where, I don't know. Like, I don't even know what the overperforming one I think is less likely in terms of just like, I think in that case, you probably just try to keep him, right? You don't want to just be like, oh, he's playing too well. Like, we got to trade him. We got to let him walk. Like, that doesn't really make sense. But the underperformance, if he's just not fitting next to Luka as the number 2 guy and the Lakers are losing games, that's maybe where this percentage changes. So for now, I'll say like 10 to 15%, somewhere around there. But I think it's pretty low. And then again, though, that if we're having this conversation like January 15th or 14th, whatever, I'll have a better idea for you. Glenn says 5 more minutes. I'll go to 110. Miss Optimist, thank you for the super chat. How did Bronny do? I thought offensively he was a bit. I'm looking at his numbers right now. Like, obviously minus 24, worst plus minus on the team. There could be some noise in that. There is a bit like he was coming in. He played a little bit with Luka, but he played most of his minutes without Luka. The team really struggled when Luka was off the floor. So Bronny was out there during some of the runs that influences that. Again, like a steal and a block. Like I think there's been some progress with him on both sides. I do think overall, though, this looks like a developmental season for him. And I think some of the progress he showed at the end of the regular season or the end of the G League, like second half of the G League season into the end of the regular season into Summer League, I feel like that momentum hasn't quite carried over. I think it's carried over in a sense with like his offensive confidence, and he does have a certain confidence and poise to him in assertion that like there were times last year, especially early in the season, like going back to summer league, preseason, early in the regular season, where he kind of had the deer in headlights look, and he just didn't look comfortable out there. I think he looks far more comfortable and self-assured, but I think the shot selection, the decision making, I think the defensive effort has been up and down. Like, I think and progress isn't always linear, right? Like, we always want every player to just be ascending and continually getting better, and that's just not always the way it goes. So I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. I would say overall, it's been a relatively disappointing preseason, just in terms of like the direction he's been headed in. I think there's been real tangible progress, and it feels like he's hit a little bit of a sophomore wall, we'll say, during the preseason. But I mean, I always felt it was going to be more of a developmental year. I thought there was an outside chance maybe he could push for a back end rotation role depending on his performance. That I don't think is going to happen. Well, Mars Hall, Jovan, who out of the expiring contract players won't be with the Lakers? I think the most expendable player of the expirings is Maxi Kleba. Like, Gabe, I think, has played like one of the most. If we're looking at like, maybe this is an episode that maybe I do it Thursday, right? Like, it's a kind of like a stock watch of the way things are trending with certain players, and I think with Bronny and Dalton, it's probably a negative right now. But the two guys who I think have been the biggest winners of the preseason, outside of the obvious of like, I think Austin's looked great offensively. I think Ayton, I mentioned his defense and rebounding to me have been like B+ A- level. Like, he's been overall, I think, a positive. But I look at Gabe and Vando as the two guys who, like, if we're being honest, were not playing up to their contracts, both in part because of injuries, but also because of performance. Like, I think they have both underperformed their contracts the last 2 years, and the Lakers have been losing out on value and money with those two guys. Incredibly small sample size. We're talking about a few preseason games here, but Gabe has looked better and more comfortable, and I've liked the way they've used him offensively, though I do have some questions about how much that will apply in the regular season when they're at full strength or close to full strength. But then Vando is just athletically, physically, he's been disruptive defensively. So those two guys have trended positively, and I think played up to their value, if not look like they could exceed it. So the guy that, to me, looking at the expiring guys, is just Maxi. We haven't even seen him yet, so maybe he changes this conversation. But like, Rui is an important piece, whether he's a starter or a key bench guy. I think Gabe is playing his way into a more important role potentially. Maxi's the guy that, just as of right now, we haven't seen it. He hasn't been healthy, and I think if it's right now between trading Maxi or Gabe, I think the Lakers would rather trade Maxi. So I think it's changed my previous trade ranking. I'd said something like Gabe, Maxi, Dalton in terms of most likely to be traded. I think that might be flipped now. Maxi, Gabe, Dalton, or even Maxi, Dalton, Gabe. But those to me still are the three guys who I think are the most likely to get moved overall. I just think that the order has shifted a little bit. Puppy Chow 302, what is the all-in trade you think the Lakers should be targeting for a shot to win now? I think it's a wing defender, and I think short term it's Wiggins. Maybe longer term it could be Dylan Brooks, depending on what happens with Phoenix. Or a New Orleans wing. Like, I'm going to continue to say the same names just because I don't think anything has changed. But yeah, I would say one of, like, I guess if we're doing gold medal, it would be one of the New Orleans wings. Silver medal, it's close for me between Brooks and Wiggins. I think Wiggins is quicker, more athletic. Brooks is bigger, more physical. That's a tough one. I might lean Wiggins. I'd probably lean Wiggins as silver, Brooks as bronze, but I think Brooks probably costs you less overall. Omaris Hall, what grade would you give the Lakers this preseason? I don't know if you're gonna like this grade. I'm between a C minus and a D plus. I don't really think you could give them higher than a C minus. All right, I am. Well, maybe let's wrap on a more positive note. I don't want to just give the team. I've seen some C minuses in here. Brad says F. Brian Farmer. Well, I'll answer this one, and I think this one. I'm seeing F. I'm seeing C. A lot of C minuses. So I think it's more so the consensus opinion. Like it's hard to say. 1 and 3. Haven't seen the full group yet. Like there are individual performances we could be encouraged by and like trends we could be encouraged by, but overall we this is kind of like a blank canvas with this group. Although I think we can project out some things. Brian Farmer asked if you could ask Rob any question and he would have to answer it honestly, what would you ask? I would ask him the question I asked him at Media Day that he, let's say, sidestepped, where I asked directly about the view of the roster and the reporting that clearly came from the Lakers side to some extent. I don't know specifically who was consulted or signed off on certain things or what, but like, I think some of the things that were reported about the Lakers' ambitions do not get reported without some level of, like, you're not going to run that, at least by some people on the Lakers side. So for it to be earlier in the summer, they want to wait, and they have this 2026 or 2027 plan with Giannis or Jokic or like a second star. Then all of a sudden, after Eurobasket and Luka's extension, it becomes, well, let's actually try to win now and let's try to make a win now move, and we're okay with taking on more money. Like I would like to know the truth behind that whole situation, and like, did they maybe get some clarity with the Giannis situation, and maybe it was like they thought they had a chance, and then it's come out since that New York is the spot he wants to go to. That's the team he has the most interest in. The Jokic situation is trending toward him staying in Denver. So maybe they got more intel on the stars that they were hopeful they could land. Or maybe it was Luka's performance at Eurobasket, but like I would like to have a little bit more clarity on just sort of the off-season direction and why they took the path they took, and how much of, I guess, what has been out there and has been reported is accurate to kind of the timeline. I mean, of course, I'd love to know if they're going to make a move. I don't even know if they know if they're going to make a move right now. I think they legitimately want to see the first 20, 25 games and have a better sense in December. So like I could ask that, but I would like to know a little bit more about like the off season direction and how things unfolded and what's true and what's not with some of the stuff that's been out there. All right. I am going to wrap here though. I appreciate you guys so much. I will be back tomorrow night. We're back in about 24 hours. It's a little bit of a later game, 7:30 Pacific time. I will be at the game, so I'll be coming back. It will be more of a late night game sesh. I'll probably be going live around 11 p.m. if I had to guess. But going live after that, back on Thursday with a new episode of Buha's Block. Ended up not doing the mailbag episode today because it was a back-to-back. Didn't want to step on the toes of it. And then Friday, quick announcement, I will be off Friday. It is my birthday. I'm going to spend the day with my wife. So I will not be covering the game or going live Friday night. It'll be the one time I take off a game this season. But I will be rewatching it Saturday morning and going live Saturday morning to discuss it. So I still will be covering the game overall, going live. It's just going to be a little bit later, morning after. And yeah, so that's the schedule right now for the rest of the week. But appreciate you guys. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow. I promise my hair will be done. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for the early birthday wishes. I will talk to you all tomorrow.